The heirloom sat like a dare on my grandmother's mahogany desk. A delicate silver compass, its face clouded with age, beckoned me closer. I shouldn't have been in her study at all, but the partially open door had whispered opportunity after everyone else had gone to bed. I'm Journey, and until that moment, I'd played my role as the dutiful granddaughter perfectly. 32 years of nodding, agreeing, and swallowing my questions about our family's peculiar dynamics. But something about that compass pulled at threads I'd long ignored. My fingers trembled as I lifted it. The metal felt warm, almost alive, despite the late-night chill of the old house. Turning it over revealed an inscription I'd never noticed during its rare appearances at family gatherings. Truth points north, but lies guide the way. Put it down. My grandmother's voice sliced through the darkness. She stood in the doorway, her silk robe catching the hallway light, transforming her into a looming shadow. You were just where you shouldn't be. Her words carried the weight of decades of authority. That's not meant for your hands. I set the compass down, but didn't step back. Why not? What makes Leon more worthy of it than me or Faith? My grandmother's laugh held no warmth. Your cousin understands his place. You've always struggled with yours. Because you've never actually told me what that place is. The words escaped before I could stop them, years of frustration finally finding voice. She moved to her desk, her movements precise despite her age. Family legacy isn't about fairness, Journey. It's about preservation. She picked up the compass, cradling it like a wounded bird. Some things must remain buried, like whatever happened to Aunt Clara. I watched her fingers tighten around the compass, or why my mother flinches every time you mention her childhood. Your mother made her choices. My grandmother's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, as did Clara, as you're making right now. A knock at the study door made us both turn. Ruth, my grandmother's caretaker, stood there with concern etched on her face. Ms. Ethel, your evening medication. Not now, my grandmother snapped, but Ruth didn't move. It's important you stay on schedule. Ruth's eyes met mine briefly, carrying a warning I couldn't quite decode. I seized the moment of distraction. What choices exactly? Because all I see are secrets you use to control everyone. My grandmother placed the compass in her desk drawer, the lock's click echoing with finality. Go to bed, Journey. We'll discuss your concerns in the morning. But her tone promised no discussion, only consequences. As I turned to leave, Ruth touched my arm gently. Sometimes, she murmured, the truth finds its way out, no matter how carefully it's hidden. I lay awake that night, the compass's inscription burning in my mind. Somewhere in this sprawling house, my mother slept in her childhood room, my sister Faith in hers, both of them wrapped in the suffocating embrace of family obligation. My father would be awake, probably reading in the guest room, ever the outsider trying to protect us from within. And Leon, perfect, favored Leon, would be dreaming of his inheritance, unaware that I'd just stumbled upon something that might unravel everything. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Did you find it? I stared at the message, realization dawning. Faith had left that study door open on purpose. She'd known about the compass, known I would look. But before I could reply, another message appeared, this one from an unknown number. Some compasses point to destruction. Choose your direction carefully. I deleted both messages, but their weight remained. Tomorrow, my grandmother would begin her retaliation. Leon would circle like a shark scenting blood, and somewhere in this house, Ruth knew more than she was telling. The game had begun. And I finally understood. This wasn't just about an heirloom. This was about power, truth, and revenge. 3 things my grandmother had hoarded for far too long. Morning brought no clarity, only the suffocating weight of family breakfast. I watched my grandmother preside over the table like a judge at trial. Her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her presence demanding submission. I trust everyone slept well. Her question carried hidden barbs, her eyes finding mine. My mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Journey, you look tired. Were you up late? Before I could answer, Leon cut in. Actually, I heard movement in the study last night. Quite late. His smile didn't waver as he buttered his toast. Probably just the old house settling. My sister Faith studied her plate with unusual intensity. The text she'd sent still burned in my mind, but I couldn't confront her here. Not with everyone watching. The house holds many secrets, Ruth said quietly, as she refilled coffee cups. Some of them quite restless. My grandmother's hand tightened around her teacup. That will be all, Ruth. But as Ruth withdrew, she dropped a folded piece of paper beside my plate. I slipped it into my pocket, feeling Leon's gaze track the movement. "Journey," my grandmother announced. "Walk with me in the garden after breakfast. We have matters to discuss." My father cleared his throat. "Perhaps I should—" "No, Kenneth." Her tone left no room for argument. "This is between Journey and me." The garden path felt like a gangplank. My grandmother moved with deliberate slowness, each step measured. "Your mother was much like you at your age, questioning, searching." She paused beside a rose bush. "It nearly destroyed her." "What did you do to her?" "I protected her, as I've protected all of you." She turned, sunlight catching the diamonds at her throat. "Your Aunt Clara thought she knew better. Look where that led her." "Where did it lead her? Because no one will tell me why she left." "She chose to leave." My grandmother's voice hardened. "As you seem determined to do." "I'm not leaving, I'm looking for the truth." "Truth?" She laughed, the sound brittle as dead leaves. "You wouldn't recognize it if it stood before you. Ask your mother about the summer she tried to run. Ask her what truth cost her." I felt the paper in my pocket, suddenly heavy with possibility. "Maybe I will." "Do that." She stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. "But remember, some questions can't be unasked, some answers can't be unknown." Later, I found my mother in the conservatory, her hands shaking as she arranged flowers. "Mom?" She didn't turn. "Not now, Journey." "When did you try to run away?" The vase slipped, water splashing across marble. "Who told you?" "Grandmother. What happened that summer?" Her shoulders tensed. "Nothing that matters now." "It matters enough that you're still afraid to talk about it." She finally faced me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Your grandmother, she knows things, about everyone, things that could—" She stopped, pressing her lips together. I pulled out Ruth's note, unfolding it carefully. Inside, in neat handwriting, "Check the loose floorboard in the East Wing guest room. Your mother's old diary is still there." "Mom, what—" "Journey." Leon appeared in the doorway, his timing too perfect to be coincidence. "Grandmother wants to see you in the study, immediately." My mother's face drained of color. "Go," she whispered. "Don't keep her waiting." But as I moved to leave, she caught my arm. "Whatever you find," she murmured, "remember, the compass doesn't always point true." In the hallway, Leon stepped into my path. "Quite the family historian suddenly, aren't you? Digging up old stories, asking dangerous questions. Afraid of what I might find?" His smile turned predatory. "Afraid of what you'll lose. Grandmother's patience isn't infinite, neither is mine." "Is that a threat?" "A warning, from someone who knows how this ends." He leaned closer. "Ask Faith about last night, about what she really saw in the study. Then decide if your truth is worth the price." I watched him walk away, his words settling like poison. The East Wing waited, with its loose floorboard and buried secrets. My mother's diary might hold answers, but Leon's warning suggested questions I hadn't even thought to ask. And somewhere in this maze of half-truths and veiled threats, my sister Faith was playing her own game. One that could either save or destroy us all. The study door stood open, my grandmother's summons hanging in the air. But for the first time in my life, I turned away from it. Some answers couldn't wait. The East Wing floorboard yielded nothing but dust and dead spiders. Someone had been here first. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood, fighting back frustrated tears when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The cafe on Mason Street, 1 hour, Clara." My Aunt Clara. The family exile. The warning bells in my head screamed trap, but I went anyway. She sat in the furthest corner, her silver-streaked hair shorter than I remembered, her eyes sharper. You look like your mother at your age, before Ethel broke her. You've been gone 15 years. I remained standing. Why surface now? Because you found the compass. She gestured to the chair. And because Faith isn't the only one who's been watching the study at night. I sat slowly. You've been in the house. Ruth lets me in sometimes, when your grandmother takes her sleeping pills. Clara's fingers drummed against her coffee cup. Did you read the inscription? Truth points north, but lies guide the way. Your grandmother's favorite joke. The compass doesn't point north at all. It points to whatever she wants it to point to. Clara's laugh held no humor. Just like she points all of us where she wants us to go. What happened that summer, when my mother tried to leave? Clara's expression darkened. Your mother found evidence, documents proving your grandmother's fortune came from betraying her own sister. My mother. She died in poverty while Ethel lived in luxury. That's impossible. The family money came from lies. Clara cut me off. All of it. The compass was my mother's. Ethel stole it, along with everything else, then twisted the story until she became the victim. She's been doing it ever since. A shadow fell across our table. Leon stood there, his presence like ice water down my spine. Aunt Clara, he said smoothly, Grandmother will be interested to know you're back in town. Still playing watchdog, Leon? Clara's voice dripped contempt. Like father, like son. Leon's facade cracked slightly. At least I have a father. Clara stood so quickly her chair toppled. Tell your grandmother I know about the safe, about what's really inside it. She turned to me. Ask Faith about the attic key, but be careful who you trust. Even sisters can be bought. She was gone before I could respond. San, leaving me alone with Leon's darkening expression. Quite a performance, he said, sitting uninvited. Did she mention she tried to burn down the house, with everyone inside? You're lying. Am I? Ask Ruth. She was there. He leaned forward. Clara's not seeking justice, Journey. She wants revenge, and she's using you to get it. Like grandmother's using you. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. You have no idea what's really at stake. That compass, it's worthless. The real prize is what it unlocks. He released me, standing. Choose carefully whose story you believe. Some truths are worse than lies. Back at the house, I found Faith in the attic, surrounded by old photographs. Looking for this? She held up an ancient key without turning around. How did you know you'd come? Because Clara's predictable. She always sends people here first. Faith finally faced me. But she never tells them everything. Then you tell me. Can't. Grandmother's watching, but... She pressed the key into my hand. Third floorboard from the window, tonight, after everyone's asleep. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And Journey, don't trust Ruth, she works for Leon now. I stared at the key, its weight somehow heavier than the compass had been. Why are you helping me? Because someone has to break the cycle. Faith's eyes met mine. And because I found Mother's real diary. The one Grandmother didn't burn. What happened that summer? It's happening again. Right now. To us. A floorboard creaked behind us. Ruth stood in the doorway, her usual warmth replaced by something harder. Your grandmother's asking for you both, now. As we descended the attic stairs, Faith squeezed my hand. A warning or a promise, I couldn't tell. The key burned in my pocket like a live coal, and somewhere in this maze of lies and half-truths, a compass pointed toward destruction. But whose? The third floorboard held my mother's diary, but I never got the chance to read it. My grandmother's announcement at dinner changed everything. I've made my decision about the compass. She surveyed the table like a general before battle. It will go to Faith. Leon's fork clattered against his plate. Faith's face went white. And my mother looked terrified. Grandmother, Leon started, his voice tight. We discussed. Plans change. She lifted her wine glass. Faith has shown initiative recently. Haven't you, dear? My sister wouldn't meet my eyes. The key she'd given me felt like a brand in my pocket. Of course, my grandmother continued, the transfer requires certain conditions. Faith must marry within the year. To someone suitable. You mean someone you choose, I said. My father touched my arm. Journey. No, I pushed back from the table. This is what you do, isn't it? You don't give, you trade, everything has a price. Journey. My mother's voice cracked. Please. Tell them, I demanded. Tell them about the summer you tried to leave. Tell them what grandmother's price was then. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Ruth appeared at the doorway. Ms. Ethel, there's a call. It's Clara. My grandmother's mask slipped for just a moment. Impossible, she wouldn't dare. She says she's at the bank, with proof about your sister's estate. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. My grandmother stood slowly. Leon, come with me. Faith, you as well. She paused. Journey, stay where you are. But as they filed out, Ruth pressed something into my hand. A folded note. I waited until they were gone to read it. Your mother's diary isn't the only one. Check the garden shed. Quickly. I slipped away from the table, ignoring my mother's pleading look. The garden path never seemed longer. Each step weighted with urgency. The shed door creaked as I pushed it open. Looking for this? Leon stepped from the shadows, holding a leather-bound book. Aunt Clara's diary. The real one. He tossed it to me. Read page 47. I opened it with trembling fingers. The entry was dated the summer my mother tried to leave. Your mother didn't just try to escape, Leon said quietly. She succeeded, for 3 whole months, with you. The words blurred on the page. That's not possible. I would remember. You were 4. Grandmother hired people to bring you both back. But here's what Clara didn't know. Your mother made a deal. Your freedom for Faith's safety. What are you talking about? Faith isn't your father's daughter. She's the price your mother paid to come home. The diary slipped from my hands. You're lying. Ask her yourself. He nodded toward the house. But do it quickly. Grandmother's patience is running out, and Faith's marriage arrangement isn't just about the compass. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand. There's no winning against her. The game was rigged before you were born. He stepped closer. But I can help you if you help me first. A scream from the house cut through the night. We both turned to see Faith running down the garden path, my grandmother's compass clutched in her hand. She took it, Faith gasped, thrusting it at me. Here, it's yours. It was always meant for you. Faith, don't, Leon started. Shut up. She turned to me, tears streaming. I found the adoption papers in the attic. I know what I am, what she made me. She pressed the compass into my palm. Break it, please. It's the only way to end this. Footsteps thundered behind us. Ruth's voice carried across the garden. She's having another attack. Ms. Ethel's collapsed, Leon cursed, running toward the house. Faith grabbed my arm. Now's our chance. We can... Journey! My mother's voice, desperate and breaking. She's asking for you. Please! I looked down at the compass, its face gleaming in the moonlight. North didn't matter anymore. Every direction led to lies. Whatever you decide, Faith whispered, remember, we're both her prisoners, just in different cells. The compass grew heavier with each step back to the house, where my grandmother waited with whatever new price she'd decided to extract. But for the first time, I understood the true cost of truth in our family, and I was finally ready to pay it. My grandmother lay in her bed like a spider in its web, pale, but still dangerous. The compass sat heavy in my pocket as I entered her room. Show me, she commanded, her voice barely a whisper. I placed it in her trembling hands. Her fingers traced the inscription, and something like relief crossed her face. So Faith chose sides after all. She chose truth. Truth? She attempted to sit up, Ruth quickly adjusting pillows behind her. You want truth? Ask Ruth what she found in the bank vault today. Ruth's usually steady hands faltered as she arranged the medication bottles. Ms. Journey should hear it from her mother. My mother's been lying to me my whole life. To protect you, my grandmother said, from becoming like Clara, like your real father. The room tilted slightly. What? Show her, Ruth. Ruth pulled an envelope from her pocket, hesitating before handing it to me. Inside was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. The headline read, Local man dies in prison after failed arson attempt. Clara's brother, my grandmother explained. Your mother's first love. The one who tried to burn down our house, with her in it when she refused to run away with him. My hands shook. You're lying. Am I? She gestured to Ruth. Show her the rest. Ruth produced another document, a birth certificate. Mine, with a different father's name. Your mother was already pregnant when she married Kenneth, my grandmother continued. He agreed to raise you as his own, to save her from scandal, to save you from your father's legacy. The door opened. Faith stood there, but something had changed in her stance. She looked confident. Tell her the rest, grandmother, about Clara's mother, about what you really did with her inheritance. Faith, Leon's warning voice came from behind her. Don't. Or what? Faith stepped into the room. You'll tell grandmother how you've been working with Clara all along, how you helped her get into the house that night. Leon's face drained of color. My grandmother's hand clutched at her chest. That's right, Faith continued. I found your burner phone, saw the messages. You wanted the compass for yourself, to unlock the safe where grandmother keeps the real estate deeds. The proof of what she stole. Enough. My grandmother's voice cracked like a whip. Ruth, get everyone out, except Journey. But Ruth didn't move. Instead, she pulled out her phone, displaying a video. Or we could watch this. From the night Clara's mother died, the security footage you thought you destroyed. The room went silent except for my grandmother's ragged breathing. Leon lunged for the phone, but Faith blocked him. In the chaos, the compass slipped from my grandmother's grasp, clattering to the floor. The face cracked, revealing a small key hidden inside. The safe, Leon whispered. My grandmother started to rise, her face contorted. Journey, please. Don't listen to her, Faith urged. Everything she's ever told you was to protect this family. Leon cut in. Think about what you're doing. The safe, Ruth said quietly, is in the study wall. Behind the painting of Clara's mother. The truth you're looking for. It's all there. My grandmother's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. If you open that safe, you destroy everything. Your mother's reputation, Kenneth's sacrifice, Faith's future. Is revenge worth that price? I looked at the key glinting among the broken compass pieces, at Faith's determined face, at Leon's calculating eyes, at Ruth's knowing expression. Maybe it's not about revenge, I said. Maybe it's about breaking the cycle, like my father, my real father, tried to do. He was a monster, my grandmother hissed. No, I picked up the key. He just saw the truth about you before anyone else did. As I turned to leave, Faith moved to follow, but I stopped her. Stay with her, this part I need to do alone. Journey, my grandmother called out, her voice suddenly small. Some truths are better left buried. I paused at the door. That's what Clara's mother thought, wasn't it? Right before she died. The silence that followed was all the answer I needed. The study waited downstairs, and with it, the truth that had cost 3 generations of our family their souls. It was time to end this, whatever the cost. The study felt different in darkness, the portrait of Clara's mother watching as I approached the wall safe. My hands shook as I inserted the key, but before I could turn it, a voice froze me in place. He didn't try to burn down the house because of your mother. Clara stepped from the shadows. He did it because of what he found in that safe. I didn't turn around. How long have you been here? Long enough to see Leon slip out the back door with Ruth's phone. Long enough to watch Faith choose power over truth. She moved closer, just like your mother did. You don't know her. I know she watched my mother die, just like Ethel did, just like Ruth's video would have shown. If Leon hadn't destroyed it by now. The key stayed motionless in the lock. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you weren't ready to believe your mother could be a murderer. The word hit like a physical blow. My mother appeared in the doorway, her face ash-white. Clara, please. Tell her, Clara demanded. Tell her how you held my mother down while Ethel forced the pills into her mouth. Tell her why. I was protecting Journey's father, my mother whispered. Your brother was going to expose him, destroy him. He was going to expose Ethel's crimes. Clara's voice cracked. The forged documents, the stolen inheritance, everything. And you chose her over justice, over love, Footsteps thundered down the hall. Leon burst in, breathing hard. "Journey, don't open it." "The deed's inside. They're worthless now. I've transferred everything to offshore accounts." "What?" Clara spun toward him. "That wasn't the plan." "Plans change." He smiled, cold and triumphant. "Grandmother's dying upstairs. Faith's already signed over her rights to me. It's over." "No," my mother stepped forward. "There's something else in that safe. Something Ethel never told you about." "Mother, don't." Faith appeared, panic in her eyes. "He'll kill us all, just like—" A gunshot cracked through the room. We all ducked, but it was Ruth in the doorway, holding the smoking gun. "Nobody moves. Leon, the phone." He pulled out her phone, deletion notification still glowing on the screen. "Too late. The video's gone." That wasn't the only copy. Ruth's aim stayed steady. "Journey, open the safe. Now." I turned the key, heard the mechanism click. Inside lay a stack of papers, but on top was a single photograph. My father, Clara's brother, standing with my grandmother. They were smiling, holding a baby. "That's impossible," my mother breathed. "He was in prison when Journey was born." "Was he?" Clara took the photo. Or was that another of Ethel's lies? Leon lunged for the safe, but Ruth's shot caught him in the shoulder. He crumpled, cursing. Faith screamed. And through it all, the portrait of Clara's mother watched, her eyes holding secrets I was only beginning to understand. "Your father didn't die in prison," Ruth said quietly. "He escaped, with help from the inside, from Ethel." "Why?" The word felt torn from my throat. "Because he was her son." Clara's voice shook. "My brother wasn't just your father, Journey. He was Ethel's secret child, the one she gave away to my mother to raise, the one she later destroyed to keep her perfect family image intact." The room spun. My mother sank to her knees. "I didn't know. Ethel told me he was dead, that she'd protect Journey if I just kept quiet about—" Another shot rang out. Ruth dropped, revealing my grandmother in the doorway, holding a second gun. Despite her weakness, her aim remained true. "Enough." Her voice carried the weight of decades of secrets. "Journey, step away from the safe." "Or what?" I held up the photo. "You'll kill me too. Your own granddaughter. Your grandson's daughter." For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my grandmother's eyes. Behind me, Leon laughed through his pain. Faith pressed herself against the wall. My mother wept silently. And Clara simply waited, watching the truth she'd orchestrated finally unravel us all. The compass key burned in my hand as I faced my grandmother, understanding at last that some legacies can only be broken by destroying everything they're built upon. "Make your choice," my grandmother said softly. "Family or truth. You can't have both." But she was wrong. The truth was our family, and it was time to set it free. The study had become a battlefield, with Ruth bleeding on the floor and Leon clutching his shoulder. My grandmother's gun remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Whether from weakness or emotion, I couldn't tell. "Your father wasn't supposed to survive prison," she said, her voice distant. "He wasn't supposed to find out about you." "But he did." I held up another document from the safe, a prison visitor log. "You visited him every month. Why?" "Because she couldn't let go," Clara answered, kneeling beside Ruth to check her wound. Even after everything, he was still her son. "Her weakness," Leon spat blood onto the carpet. "Just like your mind, Journey. I should have eliminated you years ago." Faith moved suddenly, grabbing Ruth's fallen gun, but instead of aiming at me, she pointed it at Leon. "You killed my fiancé, didn't you? When he started asking questions about the family finances." Leon's laugh turned into a cough. "Grandmother's idea. Can't have outsiders digging too deep." "Enough!" My grandmother's voice cracked like ice. "Journey, put the papers back. We can still contain this." "Like you contained Clara's mother?" My own mother spoke up, rising from the floor. "Like you contained my love for Journey's father?" "I protected you." My grandmother's composure finally shattered. "All of you, every secret, every lie. It was to keep this family whole." "No." I pulled out one final document. A letter in my father's handwriting, dated just last month. It was to protect yourself, because he's still alive, isn't he? And he's coming for you. The colour drained from her face. Behind me, Clara inhaled sharply. That's impossible. Leon struggled to stand. I checked the prison records. The ones you forged. Ruth's voice was weak but clear. I kept copies of the originals, in a safety deposit box, along with the video of Clara's mother's murder. My grandmother's gun swung toward Ruth, but Faith was faster. A shot rang out, and the weapon flew from the old woman's hand. It's over, I said quietly. The offshore accounts, the forged documents, everything. I sent copies to the police an hour ago. You're bluffing, Leon snarled. Am I? I held up my phone, showing the email confirmation. Clara wasn't working with you, Leon. She was working with me. Every secret you whispered, every plan you made, we knew. Why? My grandmother sank into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 78 years. Why destroy everything I built? Because it was built on bones, Clara said. My mother's. Journey's father's freedom, Faith's fiancé. How many more lives were you willing to sacrifice? A sound from the doorway made us all turn. My father, Kenneth, stood there, his face ashen. I found this in the garden. He held up the broken compass. The inscription. It wasn't about direction at all, was it? It was a warning. Truth points north, but lies guide the way, I recited, because the compass never pointed north. It pointed to the safe, to the truth you buried here. Sirens wailed in the distance. Faith kept her gun trained on Leon, while Clara helped Ruth sit up. My mother moved to stand beside me, her hand finding mine. He'll be here soon, I told my grandmother. Your son, my father, the truth you couldn't quite destroy. You don't understand what you've done, she whispered. This family isn't yours to control anymore. I placed the compass pieces on her desk. The police will have questions about Clara's mother, about Faith's fiancé, about all of it. And I'll answer them, my mother said firmly. All of them. The sirens grew closer. Leon slumped in defeat. Faith's hand steadied on the gun, and through it all, the portrait of Clara's mother watched, not with accusation now, but with something that looked almost like peace. You wanted to know if I chose family or truth, I told my grandmother as red and blue lights began to flash through the windows. I chose both, because the truth is what makes us family, not the lies we tell to protect it. She closed her eyes, a single tear tracking down her cheek. And in that moment, I finally understood. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about forcing them to face the truth they've spent a lifetime running from. The police were coming up the drive now. It was time to end this, not with more secrets, but with the truth we'd all paid so dearly to uncover. The police had gone, taking Leon and my grandmother with them. Ruth was recovering in the hospital, and the house felt hollow, its secrets finally exposed to daylight. I stood in the study, piecing together the broken compass when I heard footsteps behind me. He's here, Faith said softly. I turned to see a man in the doorway, older than his photo, but with my eyes and Clara's determined jaw. My father. The truth my grandmother couldn't bury. The compass never worked, he said, his voice rougher than I'd imagined. Not since the day your grandmother gave it to my mother, Clara's mother, as a peace offering. Before she killed her. I set the broken pieces down. Before she took everything. He moved into the room slowly, like someone approaching a wild animal. I spent 20 years planning my revenge, but you beat me to it. This wasn't about revenge, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Wasn't it? My mother appeared in the doorway, Kenneth beside her. We all wanted vengeance, in our own ways. Even Faith. My sister's hand tightened around Ruth's gun, which she still carried. I wanted justice, for my fiancé, for all of us. Clara joined us, carrying a stack of documents. The police found evidence of 3 more deaths, all people who threatened to expose Ethel's schemes. Leon confessed to 2 of them. And the third? I asked, though I already knew. Your grandmother admitted to it. Kenneth, the only father I'd known until now, stepped forward. She's agreed to tell them everything, in exchange for Leon's protection. Still manipulating, even now. My biological father's laugh held no humor. Some things never change. But we did. My mother moved to stand between both men. All of us. Journey made sure of that. I picked up the compass pieces again, studying the fractured face. What happens now? The estate will be divided, Clara said. Once the legal dust settles, Ruth's evidence ensures that. That's not what I meant. My father understood. We can't erase the past, or rebuild what was broken, but maybe... We can build something new, Faith finished. She placed the gun on the desk, a final surrender. Something true. I opened the safe one last time, retrieving the photo of my father holding me as a baby. Behind it was another image I hadn't noticed before. Clara's mother, young and smiling, wearing the compass as a pendant. Before the lies, before the betrayals, tolls, before everything. She wanted to give it to you, Clara said quietly. The compass, the truth, everything. That's why Ethel had to stop her. But she didn't stop the truth, I replied. She just delayed it. My mother took Kenneth's hand, then reached for my father with her other. A bridge across decades of secrets. Faith moved to stand beside Clara, their shared pain finally acknowledged. And I realized this was what revenge had given us. Not destruction, but reconstruction. Not an ending, but a beginning. I gathered the compass pieces and walked to the window. The garden below had witnessed so many secrets, so many lies. Now it would witness something else. Journey? Faith's voice held a question. I opened the window and released the broken piece, watching them scatter across the garden path. Let future generations find them, piece together their own stories. Our legacy wouldn't be in a compass that never pointed true, but in the truth we'd finally chosen to tell. The police will have more questions, Clara warned. Let them come. My father's voice was steady. No more hiding. I turned back to this strange gathering. My two fathers, my mother between them, my sister and aunt standing together. All of us shaped by one woman's lies and our own choices in response. The portrait of Clara's mother seemed to smile differently now, as if approving of the chaos we'd created to find our truth. Some would call it revenge. Others, justice. But as I looked at my assembled family, broken, healing, real, I knew it was something else entirely. It was freedom, not from the past, but from its power to control us. Not from each other, but from the lies that had kept us apart. And maybe that was the greatest revenge of all. Not in destroying what was, but in choosing what could be. The sun set behind the house, casting long shadows through the study. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new truths to face, but for now, in this moment, we were finally completely free.